Human Flourishing Program at Harvard and Research Schools International. I'm delighted to be here with you today to speak about evidence-based practices that promote student flourishing.
So I'm going to talk with us today about evidence-based practices to promote student flourishing. So first off, what do we mean by flourishing? Well, when we talk about flourishing at the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard, we consider that it's characterized by these key components. So happiness and life satisfaction, kind of overall how satisfied you are with your life, mental and physical health, close social relationships, having a sense of meaning and purpose, and also having good character and virtue. So that is, to flourish, you also need to have good character. You can't kind of just be happy. It's not that good from our perspective. And even more broadly than that, we consider that education for flourishing encompasses the flourishing of students as well as the flourishing of the communities and natural environment in which students live. So that is, we don't flourish on an island, we flourish in connection with others and in our natural environment. So, to get into what we know promotes flourishing, the first one I want to talk about is social relationships. So there is a wealth of research showing that social relationships are incredibly strongly predictive of your happiness and life satisfaction. So if there was one thing you wanted to do to become happier, most likely you would want to invest in your social relationships. In fact, the US Surgeon General just issued a warning on loneliness, and he mentioned that social isolation increases the risk of premature death by 29%, calling it as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So your social connections are also really important for your health, your physical and mental health. There was a longitudinal study at Harvard done over 75 years looking at what predicts various mental and physical health outcomes, and again, social relationships came up again and again as the number one predictor of several important mental and physical health outcomes. So it really can't be understated, the importance of supporting those relationships. This has been shown in school context as well, so warm, caring relationships at school have been shown to be associated with happiness, life satisfaction, a sense of meaning and purpose, and physical and mental health outcomes that are more positive. So it's actually been shown to be kind of a buffer against negative physical and mental health outcomes as well. With social connectedness in childhood and adolescence, linked with less depression, less social anxiety, higher levels of self-esteem, a better immune system, and even lower risk of suicide. So this is just to say, when you really look at the research, it's actually quite a serious topic. Our social relationships are really important for us and can't be understated. Another thing we know from the research in education is that teacher-student relationships are very important, and that teacher well-being predicts student well-being. So if we want to support our students' well-being, we need to support our teachers, and we need to support those relationships. There's also a good amount of research showing that teacher training on promoting social emotional skills and relationships can be quite effective at nurturing more positive relationships. So that's really worth investing in. And I'm going to zip through these findings because it's a quick presentation, but I'll send you more resources as well. Another thing that we know promotes well-being in schools is character skill interventions and programs. So again, there's a wealth of research showing that across ages and across cultures, these programs can positively impact happiness, social relationships, mental health, and physical health outcomes. For example, there was a randomized controlled trial, which for those of you who aren't researchers, that's kind of the gold standard of how we know that this is in fact true. If we have a randomized controlled trial, we can be confident that what we're measuring causes the impact of the outcome. So there was a randomized controlled trial in school showing that social kindness interventions, for example, increased peer acceptance and related gratification. It also has been shown to be related to life satisfaction and happiness. Another type of intervention that's easy to do in schools is gratitude. And this one is kind of amazing because you can do a small intervention and have quite a long-term impact. So, for example, one study had people write down a few things that went well each day for a week and why they went well. And then they did nothing else. And even 6 months later, from that 1 week, they found lower depression and greater happiness in those participants. So that was quite interesting. This has also been shown in schools to increase belonging, optimism, life satisfaction, and decrease negative emotion. Both those variables sort of causally linked with those outcomes. I also like to invite participants to try one. If you right now, you can quickly text your friend something that you are grateful for, or your family member, and see just how it makes you feel, or maybe just after this event. I think you'll find that even just a quick something that takes you 10 seconds can actually boost your mood. So it's worth doing. Physical activities. So I think this won't surprise anyone that it's important for our well-being. One thing that might surprise you a bit is that the World Health Organization recommends 1 hour of physical activity per day, but less than 20% of secondary students are getting that. So there seems to be a disconnect between what we know in the research and what's happening in practice. So it's important for schools to consider that disconnect. And I also want to point out that when we say physical activity, yes, we mean education, physical education and sports, but also active learning pedagogies, which have also been linked to well-being. So getting kids up and about, especially out in nature while they're learning, is very good for their well-being too. Okay, so you can raise your hand if you are in the gray area of this graph. With this is just a friendly reminder that healthy eating and sleeping are also very important for our well-being. In particular, I wanted to mention school start times. There's been quite a bit of research showing that starting school for secondary students no earlier than 8:30 a.m., which is what's recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics, can increase students' physical and mental health, safety, and academic performance even. So it's something worth thinking about, again, reflecting on your school policies, and are they consistent with that, what we know there. Okay, learning activities that cultivate meaning and purpose. So meaning is kind of getting a significance or worthwhileness out of what you spend your life doing. Purpose is slightly more focused on future-oriented goals and directions, so how do you achieve what you're trying to do? And having a clear sense of meaning and purpose has been linked with all the other aspects of well-being that we spoke about earlier. One easy way to promote this in schools is to have students reflect on their beyond the self goals. So that is, how do they want to serve others and serve broader society? That reflection has been shown to increase their sense of meaning in schoolwork, self-efficacy, persistence, and academic achievement. I want to invite you to reflect on the same in your work. Service learning. This has been shown to be very good for our mental health, close relationships, sense of meaning and purpose, as well as a way to promote the development of our character and virtue. One thing that always surprises me is the physical health outcomes. So, for example, one study showed that participants who volunteered for 10 weeks had statistically significantly better cardiovascular health markers. And this was a randomized controlled trial again, so we actually know that the volunteering caused the better heart health markers. So this is really, again, quite a serious topic, like being with others, being in service to others. It's good for us, it's good for our happiness, but it's also good for our health. It's been shown also in a school context to support social connection, character tools, and academic performance. Music and the arts has been associated with social connection, character skills, happiness and life satisfaction, and mental and physical health. One interesting finding across various studies is that it seems to be particularly helpful for promoting tolerance in students. So quite a few studies have shown that when students who first consider each other different participate in music and the arts together, they consider each other more similar after the intervention, the participation together. And these gains in pro-social attitudes toward outgroups can persist for 6 months after the intervention. So similar to the gratitude intervention, a short music or arts activity with various students can help them maintain more positive views and more acceptance of those that they might have first perceived as different. Playfulness and humor. So research shows that this can help promote our happiness and life satisfaction, perhaps not surprisingly. And also, again, with physical health, it's been linked with better immunity, less incidence of infection, and improved psychological well-being. And one study actually showed that humor was associated with a lower mortality rate for patients with kidney failure. So that was correlational, so we don't know if it caused it, but still, it's a pretty straightforward thing. In a school context, it's been associated with mental health, social bonds, and the development of character skills. I also want to mention, because my background is originally in neuroscience, that some people think humor might distract from learning, but in fact what we find is that it engages our attention. And you need intention for the experience-dependent changes in the brain that underlie learning to occur. So neuroscience has shown that if, for example, we're doing a task and we're not paying attention to it, our attention is elsewhere, the changes don't happen in our brain. Whereas if we're engaged and paying attention, the changes happen in our brain. So humor is a great mechanism for attracting that attention, and in that sense can actually promote learning. And there have been some studies on this as well, although more research is needed. But for example, some humor interventions have boosted student performance on national exams in foreign languages. So that's an area worth looking into. Connecting with nature has been shown to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. School community gardens have been linked with more healthy eating and better learning outcomes. And we know that students who spend more time in nature, simply spending time in nature, tend to care more about the health of our planet. So circling back to how we started this presentation, flourishing is us in communities and with our natural environment. One of the best ways to help students develop that sense of commitment to caring for the natural environment is just to put them in nature. It's really that simple. Thank you all so much for having me and for all the wonderful work that you're doing.